Alright, so welcome to the first project in our Tkinter series. In this video, we're going to be building a simple login form. It's basically a very simple program, a very simple software, a very simple GUI, where we just have two entry fields, two labels, and two buttons. Or, well, three labels, one for a title. So basically, we're going to take in the input from the user in the form of the username and password. And then we're basically going to return this back into the program. So basically, we're going to divide this project into two videos. Okay, the first video is going to be about the layout of the project, basically how we position these widgets, okay, how we create and position them in the GUI window, okay, and we'll be using the grid manager for this. So this is very basic, and we'll just be using the most basic of layouts over here. There's no special options and whatever. It'll be fairly simple. So in the next video, which is basically the backend video, we'll basically have all that, where we actually focus on returning that input from the user and basically taking that and comparing it against a list of username and passwords, okay? Because basically this is a login page, right? So you can only log in if that username and password already exists and they perfectly match. So basically we're going to be doing that in the next video. And this is basically going to be the format for every video in this project series. Okay, basically there'll be one front-end video and one back-end video. And just so you don't get confused later on, there are basically two series going on here. There's a Tkinter layout series I have, which basically only contains the front-end videos, the layout videos. And then there's the Tkinter project series, which basically has both the front-end and the back-end. So don't get confused, okay? You can learn whichever one you're interested in. If you only want to learn about the layout and the Tkinter part of it, then stick with the layout series. If you want to learn both, then stick with the project series. So let's begin. I'm going to create a frame first, okay, called self.main, which is basically indicating that it's the main frame. This is going to be pretty simple, so we only will need one frame. And down here, I want to pack it. Now the reason I'm actually packing it all the way down here, and then I'm going to declare the rest of the widgets in the middle of these two statements, the reason behind that is because you can sort of imagine the frame as a suitcase. Now I want to put widgets inside of this suitcase. Now the thing is, when you call self.main.pack, or basically frame.pack, what it does is sort of closes the suitcase. Okay, you can no longer put widgets inside of it. So that's why basically any widget that you want to basically place within the frame, you have to basically put it before the pack statement. Okay, just keep that in mind. And let's create that label. I'll just call this L1 and self.main as the parent. And for the text, it'll be welcome to our login. And then I'll use grid. Now I know I used pack here when I said I would be using grid mainly, but I don't really count this as it's just, well, it wasn't compulsory, I guess, because we could have just skipped a frame and just used grid directly within the, directly in the Tkinter window. We can do this by just changing this to master and removing the frame. But it's more flexible and better to actually use the system over here. So now I explained everything about pack, grid, and place in the previous video, so I really recommend you check those out. I'll only be discussing what I'm using over here, okay? I won't be explaining every little thing about it. So I really advise you to check those out if this is your first time seeing these layout managers, okay? Basically, grid uses a row and column like system. Okay, it's a grid of rows and columns. So basically, I'm just going to give it this row 0 because I want this to be at the top and I want this to be somewhere in the middle. So I'm giving it column 1, okay, which is basically the second column. And this will all make sense as we actually proceed. Self.main as well. And this will be the one that basically labels the username entry box. Okay, now this is going to be a little boring, but you gotta put up with it. So row is equal to 1, okay, and column is equal to 0. And I'll show you the output as soon as we create the last label. Okay, self.l3. And by the way, the naming system here is totally up to you. I'm just using this currently because it's fairly short and it's simple. So what is this? Password, yeah, password. And row 2, column 0. Now let's run this and take a look at the output. Oof, okay, forgot that. And there we go. That's not bad. We'll improve upon this and we'll increase the spacing and everything. But first, let's just go ahead and create those entry boxes. Okay, so self.e1 and entry self.main, and yeah, let's just leave that for now. And by the way, if you're interested in learning more about these widgets, I'll also include links for these widgets and our main Tkinter series, which is basically all about these widgets, so you can actually learn more about them over there if you're interested. So where do I want this entry to go? This is the username entry. So it should be on the same row as the label and one column ahead of it. So column 1. And let's just copy paste this quickly and place this over here. Okay, this is E2. And this is one row below and it's in the same column. Now let's run this. Okay, look at that. That's actually looking pretty decent. Now let's actually fix the spacing issue. For this, we use the pad X and the pad Y, options, parameters in the grid layout. Now, usually from my experience, I find that using pad X5 and pad Y5 for each widget produces a pretty good layout. Okay, like it brings in enough spacing that it looks good. So if you just put this in pad Y and pad X5, that'll work for most situations. And there you go, that's not too bad. There's good enough spacing between those widgets. They're not hugging each other, and neither are they hugging the window anymore. And you know what, actually, I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to put the same thing here in the frame. I'll give it a better look. I'll put some distance between the widgets and the edges of the window. Watch. See? Looks a lot better now, right? Okay, we're still not done, so let's add in those buttons. Okay, self.b1 for button. Okay, and we want to start labeling these maybe, just to keep ourselves organized. Username. Okay. Username, and this one is password. Because in Tkinter, you really need to create a lot of widgets. So yeah, like in the next video, I believe there'll be like 20 or 30 different widgets we need to make. So that's going to be a pain. Be sure to check that out, by the way. It's very pack oriented. Okay, self.main, okay. And of course, we need to pass in additional parameters. Text. So I want to create I want to create two buttons, but let's create the submit button first. Okay, we'll create the optional buttons later. Self.b1.grid, row is equal to, where should I put this? I want to put this in a row below the entry boxes, so row is equal to 3. And the column that I want this to go into, where should I put this? Column 2, okay? And of course, let's put in that padding. Let's just copy paste this again. There you go. Let's take a look now. Okay, there you go. That's not too bad. Now, before we actually take a look at some extra stuff, which I will definitely get into, let's briefly take a look at how to actually return the input that the user puts into these entry boxes. So for that, I'm going to make a new function. Okay. I'll call this function, basically what I want is basically that this function will be called whenever this button is pressed. So basically, let's call it retrieve. Okay, so I'll just, self.retrieve. retrieve, okay, and it takes the parameter self because this is part of a class, okay, and what I want you to do is print out the values that are stored in the entry widgets. Now if you don't know how to do this, basically this I believe is how you do it. Okay, use get. Now let me just try this out just to be sure that I've done this correctly. Nope, something went wrong. Okay, what really went happen there? Oh, silly me, big mistake there. Okay, I gotta put this over here, obviously. I put that function within this init function. That was horrible. Or actually, I just separated this. Big mistake, big mistake. Don't do that. Okay, so yeah, there you go. Now I'm gonna type in something random over here, like name, okay, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll click submit. Okay, yeah, slight mistake there. Now, some of you may wonder, why am I using self.e1, self.l3, self.e2? The reason for that is basically the cause of the error we just faced. We use self, okay, self.e1, self.e2. This is basically a way that the variables that we declared over here are now accessible within this function, okay, because they were declared with the self. There we go. Now, coder's legacy as the name, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as the password, and there you go. Basically, this is how we just retrieved the data. And if you are actually making this in full with like an actual login page, which we'll actually take a look at in the next video, okay, is that we're going to actually take a look at how to return the values from here and then compare them with a list of usernames and passwords in this file. Alright, so don't get confused because I'm actually interchangeably using the word next video here because sometimes I'm referring to the other part of this video where we discuss the backend, and sometimes I mean the other layout series. The next video in the layout series is the next project, okay, which we're going to do with Pack. So I'll try to refer to that one, the layout one, as the next project, and this one, the backend for this video as the other part. So yeah. At any rate, we'll discuss this function further in the other part of this video, okay, the backend video, if you're interested in looking at that anyway. But for the layout purposes, we're pretty much done. There's just 1 or 2 more things I want to show you that will actually, that's Tkinter related, okay? Okay, so basically what I want to do here is to show you how to properly take password as input. Now, tell me this. Whenever you're typing your password, you don't see your password, do you? You see it as basically encrypted form. It's hidden from you, like in the form of asterisks or dots. So don't you want the same for your application? Well, I know I do, which is why I'm going to do this. Yeah, there we go. And here, I'll put this in both entry widgets. Now let's try this again. So, okay, sorry, big mistake. You only have to do this in the password one. So yeah, coder's legacy over here. And over here, basically, I'll try typing the password, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But guess what? It's showing up as asterisks, which is basically exactly what we want. Good. Now there's one more thing I want to show you. I actually wrote buttons here, and I wrote that because I want to show you a new button. Well, not a new button type, just a new button with a different purpose. And it's basically called the clear button. Okay, so clear. Now I'll create a new function for this, def clear self. Okay, and what it does is that self.e1.delete. Don't worry, I'm not deleting the widget. I'm just clearing the contents in it. Alright, that's pretty useful. And there we go. Now let's try this. Oof, okay, bad of me there. What I really had to do is column 3. Okay, there we go. So basically I'll write coder's legacy and password 12345, but I want to quickly clear this, so I'll just clear. See? Pretty good. Okay, one more thing. Now, because I've added this button, we can see a slight problem beginning in our GUI window. Now, doesn't it look off that the entry fields are like over here and the buttons are all the way over there? Yeah, personally I think so. So you might think that what if we increase the width of the entry widgets? Now that might be your initial thought, and you're sort of right, but there's a big problem with that. And let me show you exactly what's going to happen if I just increase the width. Watch. Okay, that definitely did not solve our problem. And why is that? The reason why is because I told you in the previous video that basically as the size of the widget increases, so too does the size of the column. And basically we can't get these buttons to come underneath this widget. Okay, we can't put these buttons underneath this widget in the current layout. The problem is that the entry widgets are sort of stretching the column 1 or the second column. They're stretching it so much, and basically they're distorting it. So this is not going to work. For this, basically we use an option in the grid layout called column span. Column span can change the number of the number of columns that a widget takes. And like this, there's also something called row span, which is the same thing but for rows. At any rate, basically what I'm going to do is that I'm going to use column span to ensure that how do I put this? I'm going to ensure that there isn't an uneven size distribution among the columns. Because right now we have one really wide column because of the entry widget, and then we have a bunch of smaller columns because of the buttons. So I want to basically evenly distribute the entry widgets across multiple columns. So basically, in very simple terms, what I'm going to do here is column span is equal to 2. Okay? And basically what this does is that it distributes the widget amongst 2 columns. So basically E2, this widget, E1 and E2 will now occupy column 1 and column 2. So for example, let's say that it stretched column 1 to 100 pixels wide. So currently, with the current system, it'll sort of distribute 50 pixels in one column, 50 pixels in a second column. So let's take a look at this. Okay, I think that looks better. It's more evenly distributed. It's a bit hard to notice these changes and what column span really did. So I'm going to sort of try to emphasize this fact more. And for that, I'm going to go and increase the column span to 3. Okay? And then I want to go and increase the width of the entry widgets. Width is equal to 30. And width is equal to 30. Okay, good. Now basically we can see more clearly what's going on. Now what's really happening is that, see, the 2 buttons are now underneath the entry widget. How is this possible? It's possible because we've now divided the window into more equally spaced columns. And so basically, instead of the entry widget occupying one whole column, it's divided among 3 columns. So we can put stuff below the entry widget as well now. Well, we could do that before as well, obviously. But before that, imagine that the entry widget is huge, right? It's very wide, and the button is small. So if you put the button in the same column as the entry widget, wouldn't that look off? Because the entry widget is so wide, the button is so small, and it's sort of like you have a massive bag, a massive sack, and you have a long stick, and you put the stick inside that sack, and the sack will basically increase its size to accommodate it, right? So it'll be kind of weird if you put something small like a ball in there. The ball will be like moving around and stuff, right? So it's kind of like the same thing over here. Basically, what we did with column span is divided that huge column into 3 smaller columns. So basically, we have more, better sized containers now. So we can put multiple widgets underneath the entry widget now. So basically right now we have 2 buttons underneath the entry widget. That's the benefit. So basically you get more control, more finer control, because now you can choose to have this button in the middle or over here in this column, because there are roughly 3 columns over here, right? So basically you can choose which column you want it to be in. So that's pretty handy. And okay, we'll take a look at 2 last things. One, I think that this label should also be given a column span of 2, because I think it looks it's a bit too over there, So let's just try doing that. Where is it? And yeah, column span is equal to 2. Yep, I knew it. It was the one that was inflating that cell size. So things do look a bit offish right now, but again, you can modify that. Like for instance, you can change the column span back to 2, and this is all just part of UI programming. Honestly, you need to keep tweaking it until you get the ideal configuration. So it's all up to you, really. So we can just keep it like this, honestly. Again, tweak it however you want and however you want the end result to look like. Okay? At any rate, one more thing I want to show you actually is the sticky. Sorry, I just need to see this again. Okay, basically what I'm going to do is use sticky. Where is the button for submit? Okay, sticky is equal to, I covered this in the previous video, but basically you can use sticky to determine the direction you want it to stick. If the container is larger than the widget, you can use this to decide which side you want it to stick to. The left side, the right side, the bottom, or the top. We use north, south, east, and west to do that. Right now I want it to stick to the east. So I pass in E. And look at that. See? It looks better, right? It's because I sort of oriented this button over there. So I told it that, hey, move to the right side. So basically it's closer to the clear button and it looks more natural now. So we're done. We're done with this. This is our final product and it looks pretty nice. It's pretty well set up. There's a clear button. It encrypts the password and it's pretty well set up. So basically if you want to add more stuff in the future, we'll have a good base as well. So yeah, this is what we're done for now. And well, we have a lot more content coming up, a lot more projects like this. And of course, check out the Backend video if you want to. There's a lot to learn in there. I'll include all links in the description below. So I hope I'll get to see you in another video then. Later.